Let me see. Dove and Stefan did an excellent job setting me up, or whatever, setting the scene.
I've been setting them up for years.
It's true, it's true. I used to have a full head of hair. I warned on the website, there are a lot of examples here, and the examples, in order to fit them on the screen, and sometimes are in small type. So if you want to get up, walk around, move closer, move further back, be very, very welcome. There are chairs down here. We are going to get small. We are going to see XML. All right, I'll warn you now. All right, but I'm going to try and keep it as high level as we can. Before I start though, anybody here looked at a JDF file before? Okay, half, that's fine. That's a point of reference to me. So I'm going to try and use a few example concept jobs, which I want you to try and hold in your mind as we go through, and sort of work through in our minds how this then represents in a PDF VT world and how this works in a job ticketing world. All right. And the first example job I've got consists of an 11-page PDF file, where I want you to think of this as containing 3 records, okay, of 3, 6, and 2 pages long, where each record is printing on a surface of one of 2 sizes. And this is a bit of a contrived example, but I've picked this particular notion just because you can visually see these are 2 different sizes. Real world, you might print them on 2 different stocks or 2 different colors or whatever, but just play along with me because it'll look pretty. All right. So each record is printed on a surface of 2 different sizes. We'll be printing this pages 1 up as well, so we're not going to worry about imposition for today. And each record we're going to staple together, just to show that with something that we can do, what we want to do as a block to all the pages that we want to have in a record. Notionally, we needn't have been talking about stapling here. We could have been saying put them in the same envelope, or give them to the same customer. But just for the sake of argument, to keep things relatively simple, we'll staple them together. Okay.
And we can use an additional JDF command.
There you go. We get to see an extra bit of JDF to talk about stapling as well, which is great. All right. So if you can read this, then you find this is as small as it gets. You're going to move up, right? Okay. This is the first and last time you're going to see PostScript in this deck as well, but I just wanted to be able to throw it in there for old time's sake. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So this PostScript is supposed to show the same sort of thing we talked about in the previous example. Okay. We've got 3 records in our job. We happen to have some comments in here which are telling us which page we're talking about. We're providing some information at the beginning of every record as well. So for example, we're providing the page size. So we're seeing 1 page size here, we're seeing a different page size here for the second record, and then we're going back to the first page size in the third record. We've also got in here, actually in this example I've got different weights of paper as well. But I'm also showing how one vendor implements stapling. So we turn on the stapling feature here at the beginning of the first record, and then we turn it off at the end of the record to indicate staple all these together. And then the next record we turn stapling back on again, and we turn it off again at the end of that particular record. So this is how somebody might do it in PostScript. What I want to get across here really is to point out the fact that when we're in PostScript workflows, true also of many other VDP languages as well, we're mixing up the content. What is it we're going to draw on the page, what the box is going to be, what are the text going to be, what are the images going to be, with device control information. Now this is relatively mundane device control information, but we could have got a lot more sophisticated here. The PostScript we might send to a Xerox device might be different to the PostScript we send to a Kodak device or some other device based on how that particular device controls the aspect of selecting media or choosing paper sizes or stapling or other things. And the whole point behind PDF VT is to try and remove ourselves from the fact that we've now got a page description language which is device dependent and keep it device independent all the way through the workflow until such time as we decide which device we're using. So the idea then is that the same PDF VT file might be created, and we talked about this when Dove was talking, right? we might create that PDF VT file without knowledge. Is this going to go to a Kodak device or a Xerox device or an OSE device or a Ricoh device or a blah 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 blah. Yeah. Whereas previously, if we were building VDP workflows, we may have had to have transferred all the assets at a high level to the production site, and then they would use whatever tools they had available to produce a machine-dependent version, be it in PPML or VDX or AFP or IPDS or blah 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 for that workflow. So we're trying to keep it workflow and vendor independent. All right. Welcome to the world of JDF. Before the world of JDF 1.4, and JDF 1.4 was published about 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not going to try and put a date in the calendar. This would be how we describe in the job ticket that device control information that corresponds to the PDF VT file. And just a word of warning, it gets easier. So this is the olden days, all right? But what we've done here is we're going to introduce the concept of a resource which controls our digital printing, okay? And within our digital printing parameters, we are going to use a concept called partitioning, okay? Which is basically a way of saying we're going to treat a subset of this job in a particular way, differently from another subset of this job, okay? So within these partitions, I've specified a default media, okay, which has a particular default size, okay? And in the absence of that media being defined later on, then that'll be the media that we're going to use for each one of these parts within the job, okay? So the first part then I've identified by actually an index into the output. So actually the output pages 0 through 2, JDF is 0 indexed. Pages 0 through 2 are going to have this particular treatment, which actually means use the default because nothing's overridden. The second record is being identified because it's the output sheets 3 through 8. And actually in 3 through 8 we're going to override the default. All right, so we specified a different media dimension. Okay. And then the third part is pages 9 through -1. -1 just means the end in JDF parlance. But pages 9 through the end, we're going to again use the default. Okay. And actually, similar things are actually being done with stitching. So just to keep, so we can look at more than just digital printing today. So stapling is being handled by stitching, and actually again we're going to do pages 0 and 2. 0 through 2, stitch them in the corner. 3 through 8, stitch them in the corner. 9 through the end, stitch them in the corner. So we've achieved what we set out to from the previous slide of separating the PDF content from the job ticket control of the process. And this is where the job ticket control of the process is happening. There's a big disadvantage, of course, to this, which you've already spotted, which is that this is all very well if we've only got 3 records. But what if we had 20 records, or 100 records, or 1,000 records, or we've been running all week, we've got 1 million records? We'd now, if we were to use this mechanism, have a job ticket which was increasing in size the whole time that we were increasing the length of the job run. That's not nice. That's something we've got to constantly keep going back, changing the job ticket, and that's totally inefficient. And so we want to try and remove that. Okay. And the rest of the presentation is about how we achieve that. Okay, but before we go there, I wanted to point out a couple of things. Dove touched on, and Stefan went into some nice detail about the DPART metadata, okay, that we can have within a PDF VT file. It's very, very heavily leveraged by JDF and the stuff we're going to talk about. One of the things, as Stefan showed us, was that the DPART metadata can be used to refer to a series of pages we want to be treated in the same way. So remember in his example, we had a customer who had the same name and address, and all of the things that belong to that customer were going to go to the same customer, supposedly. And that customer is going to have an invoice and some other pages that go alongside it, in Stefan's example. Okay, and we can use that in exactly the same way. In JDF parlance, we refer to the top level thing as being sets, and the next level thing in that hierarchy being called a document. And then actually the next level down we call document 0, document 1, document 2, and those correspond with different levels of that tree hierarchy. Not going to labour those points, but basically the point I wanted to try and make was that these words tend to get interchanged in usage very frequently because they're kind of representing the same sort of thing. So a set in the context of what we're going to talk about here has a particular meaning a particular level in the DPART hierarchy. Okay? The concept of a part, which again is a JDF term, is again referred to using some subset of the whole job. So there's this sort of notional overlap between the concept of a set in terms of the DPART hierarchy being some level within that structure and a part being another subset of the structure, but if you like you can think of it as being, whereas one slices it maybe vertically, the other one slicing it horizontally. But the danger is that I'm going to I might accidentally use the same two words interchangeably. For the sake of this discussion you can probably do that, but if you're going to be a purist you probably find somebody's going to pull you up on it. And I'll try and be consistent with my use of terms, but don't get too fussed about the particular term to how we're going to use it. It's more about the structure and how we can deploy it, which we'll try and look at. Right, so here's a DPART representation. I've simplified this very, very slightly for the sake of expediency in putting it on the slide. This is very similar to what we saw Stefan do. Here are my 11 pages, okay, in my job, and I've broken them down into three parts, three sets, okay, first 3, the next 6 and the last 2. And I've got one level in my hierarchy here, okay. At this level I've specified some DPART metadata that goes alongside this first particular set in the PDF-BT file. And what I've specified is, here's the first page, here's the end page, and actually 2 bits of metadata. I'm going to define this one as being called, have a product type called a section, and I'm also going to specify a unique identifier with this set, and we're going to call this GUID001. Okay? And similarly, for the other parts of the in the hierarchy, we're going to provide other metadata. This is also going to be another section, GUID2, and then the third section we're going to call GUID3 as well. Okay? So these correspond with different information we've got in the DPART metadata. One thing which is new, well, 2 things which are new in one thing which is new in JDF 1.4 and one thing which we now use in a new and improved way. First thing which is new is this concept called a metadata map. Okay, and the metadata map is used to literally map the world of the DPART tree into the world of the JDF. But it's quite powerful, and we'll see a few examples of it as we go through. Okay. The second thing is that we use this DPART in conjunction with a concept we call automated imposition. Now, automated imposition can be used to automatically impose pages on a surface based on a particular set of rules. I'm going to sidestep, this isn't a lesson about doing imposition, so basically all our examples here are going to be one page being output on one sheet. But just so that you're aware, if you want to go and do some bedtime reading, the whole concept is extended to handle the concept of automating your imposition process as well. But we'll leave that to one side. Okay. This particular example metadata map basically allows us to assign a value from the DPART metadata to a variable we'll be using in our job ticket. So the name of this variable we're going to be using is called run tags. It actually has a type, which is actually called a part ID key. That's a particular data type that's used in JDF. But it has this name is going to be run tags, and it's going to have a value which is going to be assigned to it, and you'll see how this will make more sense in a moment, based on this particular format and template. Okay. The way you can think of this as well, the template it says here is going to say, it says temp. And actually on the next line we're defining how we can assign a value to temp. Right? And temp in this case is using an XPath expression to pull a value out of the DPART metadata. So that path that we saw on the previous slide of where this unique ID is sitting within the structure of the DPART, this is being evaluated, this XPath expression is being used to evaluate that and assign it to the value temp, which is in turn being assigned to the placeholder run tags. Okay, so we're going to be assigning the unique ID, the GUID, what we saw in the previous example, to this run tags thing. Okay. So now here is another resource that we use in JDF, particularly with automated impositions. And we know we're doing automated imposition because this is a layout resource, and we've said here that automated is true. So that's true for an automated imposition, an automated layout. We have another partition resource here. So again, we can have some defaults at the top, and we have 3 different layouts. One which actually happens to correspond with each of the 3 records, each of the 3 sets that we had in our example PDF-BT file. And in this particular example, I've defined the media separately for every set, just to be verbose, and we'll optimize this in a moment. But basically what we've said, remember, used in conjunction with the metadata map we had on the previous slide, we're assigning to the value run tags the value from a DPART metadata. And the way this works is that as we walk through consuming the PDF in the conforming reader, we'll look for the pages where the DPART defines the run tags based on the metadata map to be GUID1. And where that's the case, this is how we're going to print it. Okay? So we're going to use media letter, which is a reserved name, which we'll see defined lower down. And there's something about the layout here, and this is normally where you would do the clever imposition thing, but I've just, take my word for it, this is basically how you define a one-up. You can just copy and paste it, all right? We've then got a second example, where this is how we treat the records who've got the run tags defined as GUID2. And here we've got a different media defined. Here we've got we called it media tabloid, okay, for GUID2. And here we've got a third example for GUID3, where again we've defined the media to be letter again. So this is the equivalent of that first partition resource that we saw, okay? But now rather than referring to specific page numbers within the PDF file, we're actually using DPART metadata, and actually, based on a lookup of the DPART, deciding which of the treatments we're going to use. So, for example, if we were to change our PDF BT file and insert some extra pages in one of these records, we wouldn't have to go back and rebuild our job ticket, okay? Because the inserted pages would still be within that particular record, and this is exactly how we'll treat them.
But why would you need 2 different parts for GUID 001 and GUID 003? The same?
Good question. Thank you for that setup. So,
and was not paid. But I asked him later.
That's right.
Yes.
You see my accountant. So, so there's an optimization that we can do here in JDF, which is that these run tags are a plural. We can have a sequence of these named here, basically to say have exactly the same treatment. So as Stefan pointed out, we might want to have GUID1 and GUID3 with exactly the same treatment, so we can actually put them in the same line. Okay. Again, we're defining the media explicitly for every set, but there's an optimization here. Still not particularly efficient because we've got to name every single GUID that's going to be used within the job, but we've managed to get a bit more compact, at least. All right, we've saved ourselves probably 100 bytes per record at the very least. Just for fun, if we hadn't specified something for GUID2, or if we were to miss out one of these, for example, that's how we do filtering or subsetting within the job ticket. Because what will happen here when we process our PDF-BT file is for the record where the GUID was set to GUID 002, when we come to do a lookup here, there will be no match. And because there's no match in the layout, in the imposition, it will be omitted. It will not be printed. Okay? Not what we want here, we want to print all of them, but that's how you would do that, okay? If you wanted to subset the records that were being printed, basically you make sure that they're not going to match any of the rules here, okay? Let's look at another way of solving this problem based on the same example. I've changed my DPART metadata here. Actually, I've supplemented it. I didn't remove anything, but this is just an abbreviated version of what I've got in my PDF file. What I've done here is I've added an extra key called named media, and I've given it a value. All right, and I happen to say I've given letter to the first one, I've given tabloid to the second one, and I've given letter again to the third one. Now, what I'm doing here, and I want to be very, very clear, As you're thinking about this, don't think about this as a device-dependent instruction. Think of this as the intent of the creator. And I've very deliberately used a different name here. I've actually used the name Adobe Letter here, whereas you'll recall the name that I was using in my production system on the previous slide was this ID Media Letter. They're different. And at some point, I'm going to map my intention, which is as a creator, I wanted to use a letter size paper, to whatever the instruction is which actually causes letter to be used on my particular device. And you want to decouple those two things. That's how you get that portability. All right. So I've got my named medias in my DPART metadata here. And so what I've done now is I've got a different metadata map. And what I'm going to do here is to my run tags variable, instead of assigning the GUID, I'm actually now going to take the value from my named media. Okay? And by doing that, this doesn't require an awful lot of rocket science to work out how this might then apply. Instead of putting the GUID values in here, I can use the values of these named medias. So I've got a definition here for letter and a definition here for tabloid. So now instead of having to name each record individually by GUID, I've now instead referenced what metadata there was in my DPART. So now we're getting serious. So now instead of having to have a job ticket which is proportional in length to the number of records that I've got in my job, it's only now proportional in length to the number of different permutations of letter I've got. Okay? And it doesn't matter if I've got 3 records or 20 records or 100 records, as long as we're only picking from letter or tabloid, I've got a very, very simple JDF which I can repeatedly apply. Okay? And that's where I was trying to get to. Now, just for fun, just to show that this could work, what I've done in this example is actually I've omitted the media, my media intent, if you like, my media name from these 2 records, because maybe I'm going to use some sort of default. So, and in this particular case, I've been explicit about particular media I wanted for my second record. Okay. Let's see how that might work. So, admittedly, my DPART. So the advantage, of course, my DPART is much smaller in terms of how much space we've got to hold on disk. You know, if this was going to be 1,000 records and only one of them is going to use a different media size, then this might be a better approach because, of course, you end up with a very, very compact DPART. But if you've only got a small number of records, it might not make much difference. But we can cope with this as well. And we cope with that by a little trick in this metadata map. So the metadata map doesn't actually just have to contain one line. It actually can be a set of rules or a set of tests applied one after another. And so what we've done here, this is our same, we're assigning to the value, to the name run tags again, whatever this expression happens to match. So this is our XPath expression. If we don't get a match for this first expression, the way this works is we go down to the next value and try and resolve that. And it could be another expression, or in this case, rather than it being a path to a location with DPART, I'm actually going to hard code a value. Okay? And it's going to have the value undefined. So now when we're processing that PDF-BT file, assuming we get a match in the DPART, we're going to assign to run tags whatever the value was for that media, that named media. But if nothing's mentioned, we're just going to call it undefined. All right? Now, in my layout resource, we can use that trick about extending the number of matches we can have on any one of these parts. So now we've got something here that says, if it explicitly says letter, or if it's undefined, use this particular way of printing. And if it alternatively says tabloid, then we use that one. Okay? So we can simplify the DPART we've got in structure, if we choose to. Just for fun, just because I want to show you what happens if you start deleting things. That's always a good way to learn stuff, right? We like code and delete stuff, see what goes wrong. If we deleted that line, that's the one difference between these two things. Okay? The consequence of not evaluating that path is, of course, for every page when we evaluate this metadata map, the value undefined is going to be assigned to the run tags. So what would happen if we run this particular JDF is that actually we're never going to hit that condition or that condition, where everything's always going to be undefined, so everything would get printed on letter-sized media. Right? Perfectly valid job ticket. You just won't necessarily get the output you were. Well, you might. Yeah, you probably don't get the. You won't get the output you're expecting because you'll only get that one paper size. All right. Let's try another example. That's a further simplification of the previous slide. So if I go back a second, what I've basically done is I've deleted effectively the redundant bits of a job ticket. That's all I've done here. So given that we can only assign undefined to the run tags, then actually I only need to define this. I only need to define undefined. That's not at all confusing, is it? I only need to mention the undefined value, and because no other value can be assigned, all pages will get printed. Okay, think of this slightly different to the previous example we had as a way of filtering them out. If you want to filter it out, don't rely on hard coding the thing you're testing for every single thing, because you've got no choice now. You've lost your level of control. But that, if you were to do that, then that's what would happen. Everything would come out in the wrong size media. All right. We said we were mentioning stapling just for a bit of fun. We can, with the first example, when we were partitioning everything by setting the metadata map to match the GUID, okay, then we can give an instruction to staple each set and do it explicitly. The second thing we did when we optimized it to based on named media, we could simplify this to say based on undefined or letter or tabloid, we always want to staple it. We can actually further simplify that actually within JDF, and we really are going off on the up in the boonies here. Because we actually want, whatever happens, we want to staple it in the corner. We don't actually have to mention that at all. We can actually just simplify this. But that's, we're now getting to JDF 102, and if you didn't follow that, don't worry about it. Right, let's mix it up a bit. Okay. Same job, but now what we're going to do is we're going to mix it up, because a page seemingly at random from each record we want to print on, have some other treatment. Now the treatment I'll use is printing on blue paper, but again it could be printing on a perforated stock or a card stock or a pre-printed shell or any number of different things, okay? But one page at random from the first record, one page seemingly at random from the second record, and one page seemingly at random from the third record will have a different treatment, and we're going to staple everything again as a complete set. All right. So here's an example of something where we've now got an additional level in our DPART hierarchy. Okay. So because in the first example we're going to treat everything that was part of a single record with exactly the same treatment, but now we want to be able to mix it up a bit. Now we want to be able to treat different sections within our record in a different way. So I've introduced a second level in the hierarchy, much as Stefan had in his example, 2 levels within his hierarchy. And what I've done here is at the top level, basically I'm saying everything's going to go to the same recipient. So I've kept my metadata for GUID 1 for the first record, and then if you see how this is working, if you follow the starts and the ends here, you'll see this is exactly the same as we had before. This is the second record here with GUID 2. But then within each one we've got another level within our hierarchy where we specified the media name. And actually we've got one of 4 different media names. We've got letter blue, we've got tabloid, and we've got tabloid blue as well. But the way we represent that within the DPART is very much the same. It's just we just put an extra level within the hierarchy. Okay? So, not too scary so far, I hope. There's no limitation within the JDF that you only have to have one metadata map. You can have any number of metadata maps running within the job ticket, all looking at or evaluating different expressions. Okay. So in this example, we're going to be looking for one variable we're going to call set tags, and the second one we're going to call doc tags. Suffice it to say, the concept of a document within this structure is different to a PDF document. Just think of document as a name, and put it to one side, please, because otherwise your head will explode like mine did. Okay. What we are going to do, however, is we're going to use now for the first time this idea of a context. Okay. The context, for the purpose of a metadata map, is an index into that hierarchy that we have in that DPART. So the first level in the hierarchy, rather than just numbering them, sorry, I'm going to go back a sec. Where am I going? Backwards. All right. So the first hierarchy within the DPART is known as the set, okay? And the next level is known as the document. So what we're saying in this metadata map is evaluate at the first level in the context of the set and assign to the value set tags this value staple set. We're going to hard code it. Okay. The second metadata map says to the variable doc tags at the context level document, the next level down, please assign the value from the name media. All right. So now my layout definition, which we are partitioning by the document tag, okay, allows to specify 4 different types of media that we want to print on. All right. If we see that this named media evaluates to letter, then we'll use letter. If it's letter blue, then we'll pick a blue paper. If it's tabloid, we'll pick a tabloid. If it's tabloid blue, we're going to pick a 4th type of media. Okay. But we're going to do that by evaluating that value and assigning it to this variable here, this doc tag variable. The stitching actually changes subtly as well to do our stapling. The stapling is basically based on the set tags variable we talked about earlier. So the set partitioned by set tags. And what we're saying here is if the set tags value is staple set, and remember it was hard coded to be staple set, it can't be anything other than that, then we're going to stitch it in the corner. All right, so that's become simplified as well. All right, mix it up again. Same job. Random blue pages, same random blue pages, just to make it easier. But we're going to choose not to staple the second record for the sake of argument. All right. So again, what Stefan told us is that we can put any amount of metadata at any level within that DPART. And we can, at the same time, we could be putting all sorts of additional stuff in here which has no bearing on our processing. Now you can think of this unique ID having the customer's name, their address, their phone number, their zip code, their shoe size, the name of their cat. All right? But the name of their cat has no bearing on the processing. There might be some other processing you want to do later on based on the cat's name, or their gender or something else, but we choose to ignore it. And I'm only mentioning the stuff which is vaguely interesting. But here what I've done is I've added some additional information here, some additional metadata for this record that says stapling on for the first record, and the second record I've said stapling off. And trust me, the third record I've said stapling on again. Okay. So now what I can do, you probably guessed how this works. When it comes to specifying the set tags, I'm now actually going to evaluate this path for the staple key in my DPART. So now I can have one of 2 possible values for staple based on that DPART. It can either be on or off. Yeah. Everything else in this slide remains exactly the same as it was before because stapling has no bearing on the imposition or the layout we'll be doing. Okay. So I still want to choose my medias in the same way as I was choosing them before, but now my stitching params can have a different test based on whether I want to staple or not. So if the stapling is on, I can say staple in the corner, and if the stapling is off, then I can turn it into a no-op. All right, so we do no stapling that particular record. So we can treat different records in different ways, okay, based on that metadata. Now, there's yet another way we could have expressed that if we'd gone back to some of our the earlier examples. Again, this is verbose. I would suggest you would not want to do this, but just to show this is how we can build up these metadata maps. In here, what I've done is shown you how you can use logical expressions to combine various tests and assign a value. So within a metadata map, we can have these Boolean expressions. So I've said here, I want you to turn stapling on. I want to set tags to on if the unique ID was GUID1 or the unique ID was GUID3. And if that doesn't match, then I want to set the value to off if the GUID ID was 2. That's a very verbose way of doing it, but you can begin to see how you could build different permutations and combinations. If you wanted to say who owned a dog versus who owned a cat, or who owned a dog and lived in Switzerland, or you can do various different things. You can control the processing in terms of how you will physically, what shell you print it on, or what envelope you stuff it in, or even remember what we said about filtering. You could say only print the records today at this site for everybody in Switzerland. Okay, but give the same PDF-BT file to another site in France and say only print the records for people who live in France. And you can you could even send the same PDF file if you wanted to. Let's say you've got 2 print sites in France, you've got one in Paris and one in Toulouse. You could further say, in Switzerland you want to print everything, small country. In France you only want to print those based on this list of cities. Okay, if you're printing in Toulouse, a different set in Paris. So that the whole concept can be expanded and made more powerful.
Still not printed?
Waiting for you to come back.
Okay. A question. We always wondered how the relation of DPARTs and DPM is. And for example, this separation France and Switzerland, is the intention that you always do this by DPM, or could I also say one DPART at a high level that is intended for France and one for printing in Switzerland? Would that be in the as intended, or would it be
totally the specification itself doesn't care which way you do it. As long as you are consistent for every record in the PDF-BT file. So you can't decide, let's say for half the records, that I want to have this particular layout. Let's say at the top level, what you could have is at the top level you could say country, and the next level you could have city, and the next level you could have street, for example. And what you can't do in PDF-BT is decide, well actually you know what, in France we haven't got so many customers, so actually we'll compress the number of levels. And in Switzerland, we've got lots of different customers, we want to have a different number of hierarchies. You can't do that. You've got to be consistent all the way through the DPART. But there's no particular requirement to optimize or arrange that topology of that DPART so that you're always going concentric, because the ordering might have meaning for a production process, but not have any meaning for either your end user or even your customer. So here's a good example. Let's say that you've got no whiteboard pen. All right, anybody see a whiteboard pen? Dry board master. All right, so one meaningful topology for what we've been talking about here may well be by country. So I'm going to have, and then there I might have city, and I'm going to have bars.
as document parts?
Okay, yeah. These are document parts. GB, I might have, I don't know, London. I can imagine how this goes on. And then here I might have person 1, I might have Mike, and I might have Dove. You've moved to London, Dove, right? Okay, and then beyond that I might have what's meaningful, so I might have my statement and might have my coupons or whatever. Right. That might be the first topology you might think of if you think like the Royal Mail or UPS or that's Post or something. If you think of it like if I'm United Airlines, I might think of this totally differently. I might want to have at the top level, have my gold flyers, and then I'm going to have my silver flyers, and then I might think of my up below silver.
Frequent.
Cattle.
Yeah.
Steerage. All right. And within gold, I might have filtered by how many years. Conceptually, it's just a database. All right. You can think of it in different ways, but the good thing is we can build with the metadata map just a different way in terms of searching and indexing that database, and hopefully there's enough power in here to basically get to the same answer. You know, at some point in here, you know, the country may have, maybe it doesn't, maybe it has no meaning to United or whoever the airline is. So I think over a period of time, you know, you will probably find use cases where particular groups of companies get together and say, okay, I'm in the statement printing business, or I'm in the airline frequent traveller business, and so I'm always going to recommend we use this sort of topology. But in theory, you know, it's just a database. These are just records. These are just entries. And I think now this is where the production side. This is where, you know, that pre-press department that would normally take all your assets and then try and assemble them into some sort of order based on that particular tool, which was based on their production environment they had. You know, are they going to do PPML or are they going to do VDX or whatever? That, I don't think that pre-press department is going to go away, but those pre-press departments now, in terms of thinking about what's device specific do I have to do, it's, okay, how does my customer want me to treat their people in different ways? Do they want to give extra free drink coupons to their gold customers and not their silver customers? And how can they, you know, what extra bits will they put in the envelope? Which might be completely different to, you know, how am I going to compose pages? Yeah?
But my question was because I think this takes exactly one aspect out of the document part metadata and puts it into the document part tree. And in our internal discussions, I always opposed this because I thought it's one artificial thing that you apply to the document part tree instead of making it orthogonal. You understand what?
Yeah. I mean, you can have a very flat database structure, and you can put everything in each record. If you've got a very, but then it becomes a discussion about, well, how do you, to what extent can you, or do you want to optimize your DPART tree? So you can have, obviously the flattest level you can have is where you put all the metadata there for every record, and you actually only have one level within the tree. But now, if there's a lot of metadata which is about, let's say, common to that record. So for example, I'm going to give that person a statement and coupons and advertisements and flyers and blah and blah and blah, and print an envelope for them and a binder and a cover. Then that's an example of where I want to put another layer within my topology, because otherwise I'm going to have lots of redundant information. Yeah, and there are other situations where you might find, if you've got a very, very long file, there are other situations where you might have very redundant information, where you can shrink the size of your PDF VT file by adding another level with topology. So both are valid, both will work, both you can find expressions to work with. It's a matter of whether or not you want to apply those optimizations, and I think best practice, I think, is going to evolve over a period of time. Because basically, at the moment, there aren't so many systems that could leverage all this information anyway. So people are just saying, put it all at the root level. You know, it's a bit like when we were all using MS-DOS for the first time, and we put all our files in the root folder. Because what was the point in using directories? Because I can only fit 360K on a floppy disk anyway. Where's it ever going to matter? Yeah, but as our hard drives got, well, we had hard drives. As everything got bigger and bigger and bigger, we needed to be more clever about how we were organising stuff. So I think we'll see it evolve over time. But the capability is there, all right? It's been engineered in.
So, could you explain maybe again? I'm a little bit confused about the difference between DPART and DPM. Is there a simple classification, or?
I think where most people would draw the line, if I were to go back to a picture, I'm going to go back to okay. So what you've seen here, and I tried to use the names that you'd see in a real PDF file here. You're seeing the name DPARTs here, and you're seeing the name DPM here. Okay, so and also here. So the DPM is the name effectively of
The metadata.
the dictionary under which you're going to hang your metadata for that particular thing, as opposed to the DPARTs, which is a set of containers.
Which
Okay.
corresponds more to the physical output later on.
Which consists more to the records
Yeah.
or structure that you have within that tree.
Mm.
So I'm hesitating from agreeing with you, Stefan, but because it's slightly weasel. But this is think of another example from somewhere else. You could think of. I'll be shot if I draw that analogy. No, don't do that one. What's a good example?
Now you've made us curious.
Yeah, I was going to try and bring XMP into the equation, but that just makes it really confusing. Think of... You could think of DPM. Think of it in terms of... All right, so you get your Federal Express, and you get a Federal Express packet, and on the front of that packet, you get there's a whole lot of information. Your name, your address is there, probably the phone number, so the driver can call you if he needs to. There's some barcoding. There's who sent it to you, etc. And all that's effectively metadata about that particular packet. So in this sort of context, that might be thought of as DPM. At the job, it's if you've got a job which was printing all those labels for all those customers on that particular day that went through a particular office, you might have they might have broken that into separate parts where they were treating, let's say, each of the target countries they're going to be mailing to and putting them in a different part, just as a way of sorting or giving some structure to the stuff that's happening later on. And it's an optimization of, we could just as easily have specified this information down here. But if we'd specified this the GUID at this level, then we also would have had to specify it here and here. Yeah, so it's an optimization to store it at the next level up in the hierarchy. It's still being stored within DPM, but it's in a higher part of the tree.
I think I got it.
Yeah.
Because I was always thinking it's two names for the same stuff.
Yeah,
No,
it's
that's
subtly
fine.
it's very different. And you'll
They
see
start with a
DPARTs.
D and then P.
They're different key. If you look in the cost structure inside a PDF file, I didn't bring a COS viewer with me, but you would see a dictionary called DPARTs, which is containing that sort of level in this hierarchy, and a bit lower down you'll find DPM. But for example, if you look at this DPART here, part 0 actually contains both. Okay, this is our first record. It contains DPM, which is common information for everything below that part of the tree, but also it contains 3 parts beneath it. These are the leaf nodes on the tree, for example, or the next level down on the tree happen to be leaf nodes. Yeah, and each of these can in turn contain DPM. All right. Just to keep it confusing, we loosely refer to the whole lot as DPART. Shouldn't do that. Yeah. Right. How are we doing for time? Good.
By the way, this whole DPART thing was probably the thing that really delayed this whole standard for quite a long time. Trying to figure it out and what should and should not be.
All good fun. Right.
We did not hard boil specific paper names and things like that into it. There was a good discussion about that one.
Very good reasons. Right. Homework. I'm not going to give you the answer to this one. Right. But just to prove that we could do something like this is possibly a little bit more real world than the last example I had. But think of, again, an 11-page PDF. 3 records, 362 pages. Right, you know the drill. But what I'm going to do here is each set is going to be printed off 1 of 2 color stock. Okay? Where 1 page in each set contains coupons, and the coupons I'm going to print on a different type of stock, a perforated stock maybe. All right? Each record is going to be stapled, but I only want to print 2 of the records based on zip code.
But staple all 3.
But staple concept. I want to staple all of them if I am printing them.
Okay.
But I choose, under control of my job ticket, that actually I'm only going to produce those for this particular zip code. So the result I'm going to have is 2 stapled sets, even though the PDF had information for all of them. All right. You should be able to use the techniques that you've been shown up to now to go away and produce a job ticket which would do that. Just to make it easy, I've There's an example PDF VT file with this DPART metadata we've been using at that location, and we'll share the slides later. If you want to have a look at it in the hotel tonight, try to print it in 60-point type. All right. Don't get too excited about this PDF VT file. The metadata is all present, but the pages are all empty. So I couldn't be persuaded to put pretty artwork on all the pages. But from a DPART perspective, these are all totally intact. The JDF file that represents the examples I've got here is also present on the Dropbox server as well. So you can download and have a play with that. And actually, if you want to play with it, I mean, these should work. These are perfectly valid files. I think they'll pass your tool. I can't remember. I think I tested it. Yeah, I did. So this has been tested with PDF Toolbox. This will go through my particular RIP, which I haven't mentioned, but other RIPs are available, and generate the output. And if you do your homework and you want to send me what you think the answer is, then I'll be happy to have a discussion with you about it. Done.
Pretty quick. Now it's open for discussion.
Another question, is there any kind of pre-flighting tool for this JDF tickets?
Good question.
Except for ripping them and printing them on huge machines?
I know of no pre-flights at all for JDF for this sort of process. There are JDF validators out there. They tend to be more concerned with the syntax of the JDF rather than the semantics. The way that I've seen vendors implement this is to allow you to take the job ticket and process the job to a low-res TIFF or some other thumbnail and allow you to do a visual inspection to make sure it's doing what you think it's doing. The reality is, of course, that in a perfect world, you wouldn't. Well, users are not going to be sitting there with an XML editor creating JDF files and then submitting them to their prepress system and crossing their fingers and hope they come out right. They're going to be using some sort of user interface to draw blobs, drag things around, see visual representations of it, and satisfy themselves that what it is they've created is going to come out right before they hit the print button. And the advantage of using something like this, in theory, is that you should get the same output, again, based on whether you're not going to a Xerox or a Kodak or an OSA or a blah, 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 blah.
The same argument would be true for pre-flighting PDFs as well. Absolutely
true, absolutely true. The advantage here is that you should be able to take that job ticket and that PDF and rip it on anything and get the same result.
There's an irony of pre-flighting PDF VT files, and that is it could take as long to pre-flight as it will take to actually print the things.
Could take longer.
It could take longer, but use a little less paper.
Yeah.
Probably what you want to do is create a subset and check that out both in terms of its content, its structure, its job ticket, whatever, before then creating the monster.
Mm-hmm. So remember what Dove said earlier in his thing as well, is that there's no variables in the PDF VT file. So the pages that you see coming out here should look exactly the same. Oh, here we go, famous last words. The pages should look exactly the same as they would in Adobe Reader or in your favorite PDF viewer as they will when they come out on paper. So it's not as if you, for example, overset text, should not be an issue here, because if you were going to get overset text on your press, you would have seen it on the screen when you created that PDF in the first place. Okay, because there are no variables here. The PDF files are in their final form. You can't say that for other VDP languages, for example. You might not detect overset text until you actually go to run that job on the press. But actually you can detect stuff like that much earlier on in the process.
Actually, you should detect it before you even try creating the PDF.
Your tool, your plug-in or your application which is generating the PDF file would normally detect overset text, and most of them do. Yeah. So pre-flighting is something which you certainly probably would have a value for, but you're probably doing it for different reasons now than you might have done previously. Valid reason,
So question to all of what are you checking in your VT pre-flight? For what things are you looking for?
Of course, all the PDFX stuff, that is the foundation for PDFVT. And then on top of that, the various provisions. So like you can only have an encapsulated graphic X object if there's if certain rules apply. So it must really be independent of the context, and it must set the graphic state before it uses the graphic state and stuff like that. So it's rules in the PDFVT standard that are simply written down. Structural stuff around DPART. So each page must be part of some DPART, and page ranges shall not overlap. But there should, and because each of them has to be inside DPART, there can't be any gaps, because that would be one page or more that are not part of the DPART structure. The tree must work like the DPART tree, so it must be the same depth across all of the tree. The number of records indicated in DPART root must match what you actually have, and it's stuff like that. So what it finds out is, besides the PDFX stuff, that it's structurally okay. So if you parse it, you will find expected stuff in this expected location, and not any gaps that shouldn't be there. And then most of the provisions around the encapsulated objects. So are they really encapsulated? And for example, we don't check if you say object is used only once and it is used twice. I don't think we check that at this moment. So I'm not even. I could look it up.
But you go into the structure as well.
Yeah, we have to walk everything, and we have to find loose ends. Like if there's like a DPART thing and there's no leaf to it or whatever, then something's bad. And so at least we guarantee that the structure is what you expect it to be. So in itself, it's consistent and it complies with the rules of PDFVT. For PDFVT2, we also retrieve the referenced files if we can find them. Otherwise, we indicate we couldn't find the referenced file. We couldn't check it, of course.
Do you open them and check that as well?
Yeah. Yeah, we go inside the reference files. If you take a 100,000 page file, it takes a while.
But by the way, one thing that I don't think any of us mentioned with VT2, we only allow one level D.
Yep.
Okay, so the X objects, the reference X object, can only be in a PDF X1A file, a PDF X3 file, a PDF X4 file. I think we allow 4P.
I saw it. I thought it must be X4 as well.
X4, yes.
I said it.
X4, yes. Very much.
Yes.
Yeah, but not X1A.
I said X1A. We allow X1
yeah.
as for a reference X object.
Okay.
The thing you're referencing, I believe.
What you're referencing. But those things obviously can't contain a reference to something else, which means that's why we don't allow 5G or 5PG.
Yep.
You know, the reason we did that was relatively simple. We figured let's get past this. We can always loosen that requirement later if we find there's a real need for it. On the other hand, if we allow it up front, it's hard to take it back later.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Will we see an InDesign version or add-on or plugin which will output PDFVT?
Yes, not directly from Adobe. There are several vendors who are already providing that and who have announced that. I know XMPy has announced it, and they showed that. I believe Hewlett Packard has a plugin to InDesign that they have both announced and actually shipped. You know, I'm not going to comment how good, bad, or indifferent because I haven't looked at the quality, but they've both told us of their intentions and claim they have that already. I do know that.
Possibly release it or show it on Drupal?
I think you're going to see a lot of this at Drupal. Now, the one thing I do have concerns about, there have been some vendors I'm not going to discuss who claim, yeah, we're supporting PDFVT, and you take a look at the file that comes out, it's not even tagged as an X4, much less a PDFVT file.
But I think we're quite early in the ecosystem at the moment, and I think as time goes by, and we find this is all standard, right? As more and more tools are available and more widely available, work with these standards, so we managed to raise the water the water lifts all boats. All right. So we with tools like the toolbox that Olaf has with PDF Library, etc., it becomes easier for people to create conforming files. And those problems that we see today, where people forget to set the PDF X4 flag or something, they sort of die off like dinosaurs after a period of time, as it becomes easier to test these things for conformance.
Do you see any concerns in that the industry is using the VT inflationary or wrongly? So I'm asking, based on FOCRA or PDFX Ready or other association which might come up with test forms or test suits in order to make sure and get some compliance to it, that people don't use it, everything which is a little bit variable, could it VT directly, or do you think this is now so strictly and nicely that we don't see any problem in that direction?
I haven't seen people testing. Well, okay. I haven't seen many people trying to test for conformance with PDF VT, period. Those that do test it, I haven't seen any problems with. So I'm not aware of there being anybody pushing
you
up.
Don't have any concerns that this is the VT flag will be used inflationary or wrongly, or
okay, that's different. That's different.
Because I just want to make sure that maybe we can avoid this when we think about it and openly say VT is only VT when this kind of general rules are followed.
Right. No, it's a good question. I mean, I've seen vendors who are claiming VT when patently their content is not VT compliant.
That's why I'm just asking.
Yeah,
maybe we can do something against it rather than running into it and doing it later.
I have seen vendors who claim it but who are not.
You want to put some contracts out on these companies?
But
it's very difficult. There's a limit to what we can do. We don't have authority of some sort of national body that says you can't do it unless somebody examines your files and claim.
But if you have consensus with an expert group or an ISO group which says this is a good way to go and this is not a good way, and we have this consensus, then we can provide some mechanics.
I think the answer is the marketplace will determine. I think you'll find that you'll see that certain software will get a reputation for this doesn't do a good job, and others will get a reputation for these guys know what they're doing.
It's the VT spec. I don't disagree with you slightly. I mean, what Dove says is correct, but the VT specification itself is not a very long spec. All right, it's dozen-page. Take off the appendices, take off the preamble. It's
less than 20 pages.
It's less than 20 pages. It's not so difficult. And so I must admit, my experience when I've come across these vendors who are doing something incorrect, a quiet word in the ear of their product manager and saying, look, what you've done here, this doesn't match this page 7. They tend to say, oh, you're right. We didn't read that bit. And they go, we'll fix it in the next version.
Very nitpicking.
Well,
and
they have to implement PDF X4, 5 as well before they can.
Absolutely. And so
that makes it longer than 20 pages.
It's and I'm not saying, and it's not necessarily something they can fix overnight. But very often they'll say, oh, we'll have to fix that in the next version. And of course, who knows when the next version will come. That, of course, varies from vendor to vendor. But I've never met somebody who had an argument with me when I pointed at something and said, look, that's not actually compliant. Everybody said, oh, yeah, you're right. We hadn't spotted that. We'll fix it in the next version.
Think about something like the alternate test suite where we see is the transparency rendered correctly or not.
Right.
And such a tool helps in addition to some pre-flight checks or
Yeah.
whatever checks. And of course it puts pressure to some players, but maybe in a general, more idealistic terms, it helps also in the long term. So,
yeah, it could. To be perfectly honest, there aren't such a large number. There aren't such a large number of vendors playing in this space to start with. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people generating PDF files. All right, a smaller number producing PDFX files. The number of people trying to produce VDP files is really small. You can get beyond 2 hands, but you don't need to get much beyond your hands and your feet.
okay.
So, to be perfectly honest, you can probably get those. You could probably get them in a room this size, and you can resolve it rather than needing to have another authority come in and beat those people up. And I think consensus seems to be working.
Okay. Is there a way to identify if a file claims to be VT?
Yes. There's a flag in the header.
In the document XMP.
Yeah.
Inti?
Document XMP.
Ah, okay. Because it's not in the like PDFX4, which has this GGS PDFX4.
Yeah, there is
In
that
same
that
thing.
too.
Yeah.
Same thing.
You have both actually. You have to have the one that says PDFVT, and you have to have the one that says X4.
Yeah.
Here?
And in
So-
both,
Yes, yes.
In both
my
cases-
slides, I
This
had
is not
that.
handbound, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
I have it on my slides.
XMP.
Yeah. Dove mentions what it is in his script.
Steuerung B? Also ist es bei den
Properties?
Eigenschaften?
Yeah.
Da sollte es sein.
XMP. Not in the raw,
Yeah.
Not in
Document.
general.
source code, so to speak. of
Okay,
XMP.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not in the
It's
UI.
in 2 places.
Okay, not in the UI when we view your properties.
Sorry?
So you expect it in the properties. Control
It's
D.
not-
The properties is a feature of a certain program,
Yeah, okay.
which is not the same as any standard specification. So the rule both for PDFX4 and PDFVT is to put a certain key value pair in a certain place inside the document level XMP. Full stop.
And we have
It's the same. No, I'm sure you do. And it's the same mechanism for PDFX4 and PDFVT. It has been a different mechanism for PDFX3 and PDFXA1 because we were still using document info at that time. But that has been deprecated in terms of indicating the standard conformance for PDFX4, PDFX5, and PDFVT.
So what is an easy way to identify this with board tools, with existing tools? And
You would
easy-
actually, in a tool like, I don't know about Adobe Reader. Let me try.
Right.
I'm not sure whether I have a
I'm not sure it will.
PDF-VT file right here.
click
but
download it from the.
You can click on the link on my
But you want,
from my
if you can
presentation.
see it and read it, the document,
This would be
XMP,
one.
Yeah, go for that one.
you can.
Trying to allow,
I'm almost sure.
and it's
Oh,
this
it's
is the guy.
opened it in preview. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Put it on the desktop,
You cannot see the XMP.
and then we open
This
it.
one,
in-
yeah.
So I go to Acrobat Pro first because I know we can see something there,
Control D.
and then it's actually the properties dialog,
Yeah.
and you go to advanced.
Yes.
No, you go to the other advanced, like the additional metadata. It's not showing right away in the
Okay.
predefined UI fields, but under advanced, you will actually find this thing here.
This is quite a stretch. I've not looked at this, so I hope it's right.
Oops, I found a keyboard shortcut that can crash something. Let me try again. I should get back to quality engineering.
Yeah, sure.
So again, advanced, and here you have it. So it's in its own namespace, NPAS, which is the North American standards body for this kind of stuff. And
Yep.
they maintain the PDFVT namespace in this context. And there's 2 entries. One is the PDFVT1, which very clearly is an indicator that this claims to be a PDFVT1 file. And this is another piece of information that indicates it's more.
That file isn't tagged as a PDFX4 file, is it?
Should.
That would not be good.
That's
Yeah,
not
I
good.
missed it. Sorry. It's got no content. It's got no content either. I mean, all pages are blank. So, yeah, I should have.
That
Can
needs
we
to be-
open
that
the-
needs to
but
be-
if-
All the missing content in here is you'll
download
find is in the
directly.
right color space.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, my blank pages are in the right color space.
Let's have a look at the other one.
Okay, you can fix it up during dinner
I'll
tonight.
fix it. Yeah.
Stefan?
Go to Developer Center on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Go to PDF Lib Cookbook. And then in the top level headline you should find PDFVT. And it's,
We take the simple one.
yeah,
It's this would. Oh no, I should not click. Okay, anyway.
this is the program, and then there's one link, show output file or something
This,
like
is
that.
it? Okay. And
Oops.
Wait.
There's something slightly wrong.
Maybe it's intentional.
No.
Nope.
let me see.
Encrypted
What
PDF.
viewer is that?
This is of course quartz, which doesn't mean anything in our field.
Side annoyance.
It's better.
Yeah, that's
That's the
obvi-
difference
that's
between
tagged
high
as-
quality software and not so high quality software.
That obviously is tagged as a PDF X something based on the icon on the left.
Yeah, it already accurate says that
Yes.
I think this is a PDF something file. I go here, it says this claims to be a
X4.
X4.
That's where I would like to see
Yes,
VT as well.
Next version.
Talk to this gentleman maybe. I don't know.
It can only display one conformance at a time, this dialog.
What this currently does only shows one at a time.
Yeah.
No comments about future releases.
You think what you want about this statement.
You can switch off the mic.
So we have now the PDFX entry, and I'll open that and it will clearly indicate it's a PDFX4 file. And on top of that, it's a PDF VT1 file.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we've not.
It claims to be.
Claims to
Claims
be,
to be,
yeah.
yeah.
So far it claims to be.
Well, you can
Yeah.
check X4. That's easy. Hit the verify conformance button there, and we can see what happens there.
It could even verify the VT.
And I would have to use a different tool for now.
Toolbox.
Ah, okay.
The beach ball.
It's thinking.
It succeeded.
So
Good.
Demo gods are
we
winners
all did
today.
the right thing. So. No.
I like to see when things work.
You should use either go to V2.
I like to see when things work.
Yeah, that's an advantage.
Shame about courts though, eh?
There's one other topic I run into again and again with people coming from the output management direction. We have some people here from that direction. They kind of say they want to put more or less machine or output process specific information into the DPART stuff, like switch between paper trays, switch between one-sided printing and duplex printing, two up, maybe different paper qualities. What else? Black and white versus color printing. And they say that it's only like 5 things that we really care about. Anything beyond that is really machine specific or system specific at the side of the service provider. But it would be so nice if we could simply put simplex, duplex, black and white versus color printing, and tray switching inside the PDF-VT file. My reply always is it should stay outside of the PDF-VT file, and I would rather, and that's my current understanding, say put enough information into DPART so that you can map that information to some machine setup, and saying all the statement portions shall go on paper tray 1, and then the transpromo portion, which is kind of the next pages, should go to paper tray 2, and then of the promotion, the first page is full color and the following pages are black and white, stuff like that. And then of course always start a new letter on a fresh page and things like that. And my argument would be that you lose some flexibility you may miss later on if you kind of didn't do it the right way inside the PDF-VT file. And rewriting a PDF-VT file doesn't make a lot of sense because it tends to be relatively big. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing PDF-VT. You don't have to do PDF-VT for 100 pages. And I think Kurt Pfeiffer is kind of from that corner of the world, and Andreas Penak as well. And that also got at least Kurt in touch with me, I think, because he approached me and says, PDF-VT is a cool thing, but where's the job ticket?
Outside.
Well, my intention was not PDF-VT is for production printing, no doubt about that. But we have a lot of printers out there who are capable of consuming PDF, office printers now, small printers, but nobody sends PDF to those printers. They still send PostScript because they can't control even the smallest thing. And that, my impression is that holds back the general adoption of PDF as a general print format, even on the field of PDF-VT, because a lot of people are not aware that what you could do with it.
Well, let me try to answer that a
If they
little
would
bit.
be used to, even in their little primitive office jobs, which only need maybe stapling, maybe control of which tray and duplex, simplex and A4, A3, if they would be used to do that with PDF directly, they would much more easily adopt to the idea of PDF VT even from their big print runs.
First of all, in terms of the low-end printers you're talking about, very few of them at this point have direct PDF capability. They're all,
Most of the Ricos have.
they don't. They have PostScript, and there's a converter inside the printer that goes PDF to PostScript, which I will not recommend for anyone to use.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, there is a driver that, but you will see that as time goes on, the level of true PDF direct printers will come down. That's going to take some time. Okay, a lot of it has to do with our OEMs deciding when and how to revise their models. Next, there is a driver that Adobe is beginning to make available through its OEMs with direct PDF printers that effectively will do the job ticketing in a invisible manner to the end user. They won't know what it is. They'll see a print dialog on a Mac or Windows, and where that information goes is external to the PDF, but it is a job ticket. The best JDF, by the way, is where you never see the JDF.
So it's JDF job ticket or your
Yeah.
own?
Whatever the OEM decides they want to use. Okay, it's a customizable driver based on what the OEM decides to do with it.
So for each engine you need its own driver.
It depends on the OEM and how they configure it. They can basically have it support any number of models.
Including JDF.
Including JDF. What we give to the OEMs is based on a JDF model. If they want to do something and support their own job control called Shirley, then they can support Shirley through it.
But if I have, let's say, 3 different PDF printers, I may need to have 3 different drivers.
There may be 3 different instances. The core of the driver is code that we provide, and you'd see only once on the system.
And normally, if you think of if you've got 3 different printers now from 3 different vendors, they tend to prefer to customize user interface or user experience for those things anyway, even though the underlying code is common. So the idea that different vendors want some level of customized experience for their customers has been with us for years.
By the way, if you take a look at the PostScript, I'll give you the Windows side of it because I'm more familiar with the exact architecture. Virtually all the printer vendors, whether they use Adobe PostScript or other PostScript, use the pscript 5.dll driver that comes with Windows. That architecture has a capability of going against a a PPD, which is a real 3-letter word, oh, by the way. That's should be a 4-letter word. But anyway, and it turns out that architecture allows you to also have a driver plugin with the first part of the file name matching the PPD name, and that goes in and can intercept calls to the driver, intercept calls coming out of the driver, can muck up the PostScript whatever way they want. So it turns out that yes, if you can have 10 different printers coming off of a system like this, all PostScript printers, there's only one pscript 5.dll driver in there and user interface, but each of the instances is calling all sorts of customization, good, bad, or indifferent in terms of what they do for their printer, including how they generate set page device for PostScript, or in some cases, for example, I know some of the Xerox printers, they don't even do that. They put some sort of information in front of the PostScript, which is their own job ticket, and then interpret that separately. So it's a similar type of thing here. But yes, that's coming. It is an important
When
issue.
is it coming?
You have to ask the provider of the particular printer. We're not distributing ourselves.
I have no idea.
As I said, this is something you have to talk to whoever. If you're buying if for example you're buying a RIP that does support direct PDF consumption, such as EFI. I'll give you an example. EFI has some at this point that support office level types of printers, high-end office level types of printers. Would ask them, what is your schedule for providing this particular driver? Okay, I don't know what that
driver
is.
name. Is it?
Ask about the direct PDF driver. Okay, that's all I can tell you. They might have their own name for it. Might call it Max or Irving or whatever. I can't,
There is, from a JDF perspective, so I'm in agreement with Olaf in terms of I prefer not to put this sort of information in DPART because it's overloading the intention that we have for that particular structure. But I also take your point in terms of it'd be great if there was a universal way of doing these things. There's only one of a number of places where one could hang that additional production control information. DPART is one place, the job bag in the XMP is another. There are a bunch of other places. In the JDF community, we've always steered away from wanting to put production level information inside a PDF because now we've got a PDF that is now restricted in how it can be processed. So we always like to keep stuff outside. And we did define a subset of JDF, a very, very small subset of JDF called the Office Digital Printing ICS, or the Office Digital Printing Interface Conformance Specification, which is meant to be a very, very cut down version of JDF targeted specifically at those smaller desktop vendors. Okay. Not many of them talk about it. But that's a cut down version of JDF, which is basically there to talk to exactly the sort of level class of device you're talking about. And that's what the stock version of this PDF driver thing uses. It creates Office Digital Printing ICS JDFs as a compact job ticket for providing information down to the device.
Yeah, in terms of separation of, the operational side from the content, I tend to present it to people as PDF is the graphical content to its highest level of abstraction, and JDF is the business and production side of it. And it is appropriate to separate the two in terms of being able to repurpose that PDF. The moment you start throwing job tickets inside there, you have, PDF for this versus PDF for that, and you're having to keep track of that, as opposed to a single PDF with independent content that you can target any number of ways with an independent job ticket. We're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, I know.
The danger is it's a bit like taking a kid into the candy store across the street and saying you can pick 2. Oh, no, actually, maybe you only want 5? Yeah, you can have 5. But you're not going to hold them, and you're not going to limit to what they can take to the checkout, and you're not going to link with it. They'll buy more than 5. So you could say, well, all right, you have this 5, but then you'll have somebody else come along and say, yeah, but I really want 6. Oh, can I have one more? Can I have one? And before you know it, you've basically built a monster of a standard on top of. You might have had good intentions.
We actually had a
The problem
capability.
is we have monsters of standards.
We actually had a capability in the beginning that was deprecated in more recent versions. There was something called, talking about X objects, a PostScript X object that allowed you to shove PostScript inside of a PDF file and hope that when that PDF was PostScript inside a PDF file. The idea was that you would hope that if that PostScript was converted to, that PDF was converted to PostScript, that you happen to insert that PostScript X object at just the right point so that it would do something for you. Matter of fact, there were some versions of CorelDRAW that actually handled EPS in CorelDRAW documents by when you export a PDF by putting them in as PostScript X objects. They did not last very long, but nonetheless, it's something we've really tried to move away from because of problems.
It's a different thing.
Any other questions, concerns, feedback? Who of you would look into JDF some more to find out what to do with it Okay, that's good. So at least you got you interested now. Sure. Yeah. So one area where we could take this some further is actually inside the PDF Association. We have been having a PDF VT competence center, kind of on-off activity. Sometimes there was some activity, sometimes there was not so much activity.
It's very quiet recently.
It was relatively quiet recently. Some of those who could have done some work just claimed they were so busy already that I had to leave it at that.
A lot of that going around recently. A lot of that going around recently, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah. Yeah, some people are actually busy doing their day job, and that's not a bad thing. For one, you have a day job.
Yes.
And for two, it's if you're busy, then probably something gets done and you get paid for it.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. I do know that Mike, for example, I think, and Dov would be willing any time to chime in and contribute whatever they might be able to contribute. And maybe we can get some more activity going in the PDF VT Competence Center with those who just decided they should look into it some more. So maybe you could come up with scenarios like, you have such an office environment, how would you go about it if you really wanted to? And how do you do the machine control, and how would you set up the PDF VT file and some kind of job ticket, just to mentally exercise the whole thing maybe. And the other task that you should take home is, who's going to Drupal? Well, that's a good portion.
Which Spargles?
Just go to all the vendors and ask about PDF VT support. No, I'm honest. Yeah. So from a business perspective, we are clearly in the proof of concept, prototype project, pilot project phase. So I know that there are some proof of concept implementations, maybe with a lot of manual adjustments, maybe some small pilot project here and there, at least in some part of the workflow. Nobody is willing yet to share any details, at least not outside NDAs. And that's why some of us may know certain things, but we are not really in a position to share any details.
The good thing is, though, is because PDF VT is dependent on PDFX4 and 5, and because PDFX4 are indeed based on PDF, if you've got a PDF VT file, any PDF viewer can view it. Any PDF rip can rip it. Any PDF capable press.
You're not locked out of anything.
You're not locked out of it.
Not only that, but if you want to just get a page out and all you have is a €50 inkjet printer, you can always print the page from Reader or Acrobat just to see what it looks like. You know, you have a very, very short run. You don't have to necessarily go to a PDF printer or use any of the optimizations. It is plain PDF.
Yep. That's why I assume that most people will say, asking the question, of course we can. But that means this kind of compliance and not the one we anticipate. That's why I was asking the question. And I foresee this kind of situation.
There's a limit to how much you can force compliance, you know.
No. We can think about it.
In Europe, you have ways of doing it. We can't do that in the United States. Okay.
In the end, it will always be the market.
Yes.
So sure. And it has even been true with the test tweaks that we did. It's not that we made a test tweak and we actually changed reality. It was because some of the customers begin to care about the test tweak, and they went to their vendors and said, well, I just figured out that your system is not quite up to the task according to this test tweak. What do you intend to do about it? And we may have to think about certain things for PDFVT as well. Not so much maybe a test tweak like we know for PDFX, because it may not make that much sense, but some indicators in the most open sense.
The trouble is it's very subjective, and you know what is good performance is something that's never been an issue with any of the previous standards. You know, you can put in all the junk you wanted, it's perfectly valid, no one's going to complain about it. None of our experts who write these test suites, etc. This is very different. This is, you know, a matter of how can I keep a printer going full speed. In many cases, if you don't have it going full speed, it slows down dramatically. It can cause more wear and tear on the device itself. And certainly, given a production environment, it really can cut into the profitability. So the degree that you can have something that's efficient and effective is very different than any of the standards we have out there or any of the tests we've had out there. And you know, the types of one example I gave, and maybe some of the extensions of that, show that, you know, how much can be actually put into trying to do this in a better way.
I'm just talking out of experiences, because it's better to come up with something organized in such a group rather than seeing what people do and then trying to get them on board and correct them. Because I see already like Digicom is doing some certifications for very data printing shops from the customer point of view, so they would like to certify print shops claiming for very data printing, and there is and there will no more to come, definitely. And I just from the FOCRA point of view, it's like I would like to see what companies I do represent think and feel, and I prefer something when something is thought already based on such a group on a consensual basis, and then brought up rather than doing something which you have to fight against. And then it's just something I bring up, and we will see later.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
The other challenge we have, quite frankly, is getting good test files. Okay, the sample that you present is a good file, but it doesn't really challenge the graphics model. You know, it's not doing weird things. You know, what happens if you try doing these types of X objects under certain conditions, interfering with others, with transparency, and how does it affect the performance? You know, what sort of optimization did you do? And there is not a standard input stream to what can make a PDF VT file. You say it's in a design document of some type. You say it's some sort of XML stream that you have a standard converter for. You know, that's a problem.
Very complex, yeah.
It's very different than saying, I got a bunch of guys who handcraft one PDF file in a room and that tests the entire imaging model. This is something very different.
But we
So
could
we've
help
found
custom. Go ahead.
just
Go ahead.
one sense we founded a subcommittee in the Ghent working group to deal with variable data printing. So that will be one of the things we certainly will discuss, but it's way too early since the only official creator we know is PDF. The only file we know is this one. We have seen
Well, no,
that.
as I said, there are some vendors of variable data publishing software who have announced and are shipping. Okay, they don't appear at Get workgroup meetings, but they do exist and they are shipping.
But I on my plan is for Drupal to go to all these vendors and
Okay, please.
talk with them.
And one
Yes,
thing
maybe I'll
we might want to do is to help customers ask the right questions. So question one is, do you support PDF VT? Yes. Okay, that was easy.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yes.
but customers don't know which questions
Let's
to
express
ask.
it.
So
Ask for files, sample files.
Well, that is one of the things. The
that might
customers
be-
say, show us, provide some sample files, not just the whizzy thing of, you know, how you emboss the belt with the person's name, but let's see the quality of the files and show how they can actually drive engines at full speed and what's the quality and the compression ratios, etc. That's when, you know, this will become reality.
if you turn that around, you could ask a simple question like, how much faster could you print a PDF VT file compared to the same file which is not PDF VT?
Same output, yeah.
And it's not
Okay.
that you could prove
And
they
that
are
will
giving
vary
you the
from-
right or
that will
wrong.
vary so much from vendor to vendor.
Yes.
But they would have to come up with something.
If they say it's the same, then you know.
Yeah, and one of the problems, of course,
So
if
it's-
you do this, if
well,
you do
it's
this
more a
at
litmus
Drupal,
test than
you're
a
gonna be
precise
talking
measurement.
with demo dolly type salespeople who have no idea what you're talking about. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to go in the back room and find someone.
Sure,
who
but you
knows.
can
Not
insist
my
and say, well,
first-
I'm
yeah,
getting an
well-
answer, and I will publish this right away.
But
Whatever
it won't be
answer
us.
then.
It'll be people who are buying big presses who have the oomph to be able to go in there and
But
ask those
before
questions.
they are selling something, they need to make people know that they have something, and it's still the press tag helps here.
I just
It's
heard a
to talk to
present.
the right people.
I just heard a presentation from a lady from HP around the SmartStream. It's called SmartStream, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Technology together with Indigo, and they claim it's full PDF VT support. I didn't find the time to grab her and actually ask her a number of questions, but it's like it's so easy to say, yeah, it supports PDF VT, and it's like, okay, what does it mean? And she or some of her colleagues should be in a position to say, well, if we use PDF VT done nicely, maybe we can print twice as fast, or we can run files twice as fast as we could without the PDF VT information. And whether it's true or not is not even that important. It's like, at least it should be faster. If it's not faster, it probably is not really the PDF VT support we are looking for. And then the other thing would be about DPART. You could can you set up the machine so you print only the first page of all the lowest record level DPART nodes? Can you show me?
And then
Okay.
she gets the one.
Gets the
Then she
engineer.
gets nervous, and,
Gets the engineer. Yeah.
and then you have kind
Then
of
you
two
get the-
aspects,
yeah.
and you can find out you can still not find out the quality of the implementation, but you can find out whether they have done anything substantial to begin with, rather than having an okay PDF based system.
Yeah, they'll say, well, yeah, I'll get the engineer in Israel who knows how to. do
That's
it.
fair enough.
That's how to do it.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That let the customer think twice.
The new stuff you sometimes have to get to the technical people.
Yeah.
That's not.
I think we're in violent agreement on that.
You're done downstairs?
Yes, and so should you be.
Oh, gone 5:30.
Good.
I think that was the last one.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.